Welcome to the Laurent Collective podcast, where we go deeper than just surface talk.
Each week, we'll explore everything from family, business, creativity, culture, and faith.
To make sure not to miss an episode, be sure to subscribe and hop on to Instagram at Laurent Collective to chat with us about this episode.
Welcome to the new year.
Yeah.
We are back in the new year.
Happy New Year.
And coming back after a break and everything, which was very, very nice. Although I say very nice. I will say for any of you who follow us on Instagram and stuff, in our house, our Christmas and New Year's break actually ended up being filled with COVID.
Yeah.
So our daughter had COVID and then I had COVID, and I'm definitely still in recovery of it. I got hit hard, not as hard as I probably would have if I wasn't vaccinated and I had a booster, but still wasn't what we had planned.
Yeah.
But
It definitely, I mean, lots of our plans changed, but at the same time, I think there were some small little blessings and some nice fun time as a family.
Yeah.
And, instead of this big fancy dinner one night, we just had lots of fun little treats and things like that. So,
we made the best of it.
Which Jude was
much as
like,
you can.
"This is awesome. I'll remember this forever." We're like, "Okay." But,
So that's how our year ended.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the things that we were reminded of, we talked about scheduling rest in a couple episodes ago and stuff like that. We realized, this is crazy to even say this, but we realized this is the first time that we've actually taken time off for 2 weeks straight in a row.
And when he says
Ever.
the first time, exactly, I was going to say
Ever.
And for those of you who are our European friends, you're probably like, what? I mean, that's been the reaction to most of our friends here when we've said that.
Yeah.
So we're obviously coming from an American perspective of like, you get 10 days vacation time generally, and sometimes that includes your sick time and things like that. But then also we've had our own businesses, and we've been really bad at like, if we take time off, that means we're losing money and stuff like that. And even though we have said to you and constantly talked about rest,
Schedule rest.
we always usually do it in smaller pockets of time. We're like, oh, we'll take 4 days off here and that kind of thing. But this time we really did take 2 weeks off. Really wasn't fun that then we were stuck in the house and isolated and had COVID. But it feels different after doing that. I will definitely be doing 2 weeks or more maybe at a time. That is happening again.
So saying that, it's a new year. Everyone gets excited. It's a new you. It's a new everything. How do you feel about that, Maya?
Yeah, I think that's what we decided we want to talk about this because we have grown a lot in this area. That was our perspective for so many years of like, oh, it's January 1st. It's hit the ground running. Let's go, go, go. Like new year, like all these things. And it's not to say that there's anything particularly wrong with that. But I think what it does is it puts a lot of pressure on a certain date. And I will say, let me say it first. I am speaking from the perspective of someone who is an Enneagram 3, who likes to get stuff done, is an achiever, wants to set goals and reach them and go to the next one, like barrel through stuff. But I think as I'm growing in that and growing in health in that, I'm realizing like January 1st is not some magic number. Yes, it's a great time to spend time, and I think we should, as we've said before, like, and gave you some questions to reflect on the year, things like that, like to think about, like, what do I want in this coming year and that kind of stuff. But the whole idea of like January 1st, hit the gym, like January 1st, start eating healthy, January 1st, like I'm doing this and that and that kind of thing, that as I'm going to say, as I get older, it just doesn't resonate with me anymore. Like,
well, I think
it just doesn't.
I mean, again, there's nothing wrong, I think, with setting these, goals and these, I don't know, like new perspectives for the new year. Like there's nothing wrong with that. Like we do it. So it's not like we're not trying to discourage you from doing it. I think what we wanted to talk about today is just really making sure that, to have a little bit of grace in all of it. Like think about, January 1, everything is not going to change. Like you still have to
I mean, this year's teaching us that more.
Yeah. I think, being gentle with yourself and saying, okay, these are the things that I'm shooting for. These are the things that I'm hoping to achieve or to change or to better myself in. But it doesn't all have to happen on January 1.
No, and it doesn't even have to happen in January.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Whatever that is, I think that's the thing that I'm learning is that, like I said, I am very goal driven. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. And that kind of stuff, or a life change that you might want to do. And I think those things are so important because it's so great to have direction. Like there's something that it does to our life and our mental health and stuff like that as you're working towards something. Or adding, we have said instead of resolutions, we're calling it like adding habits. Like there's a couple habits we would like either to get back into that we got out of because of everything that was going on last year for us. But, all of those things are good. But I think what happens is if you hit January 15th and you're like, oh, I haven't done anything, then number one, either most people tend to be like, well, never mind. I'll try that again next year.
Right. Or that's not for me. Well, no,
that's not for me
not.
and that kind of thing. And so, even Pat and I had kind of a retreat day, if you will, of like planning and stuff like that. I guess it was only like half a day yesterday, but we had taken time to just kind of reflect and stuff like that and then think of the year ahead. And we were trying to be gentle with ourselves, like, seeing some things that we had set as goals last year and we didn't make them. Like, okay, that's okay. To reflect back on, like we said before, reflect back on, like, and look at the calendar and what we had going on and stuff. It's so obvious why some of those things didn't happen. We had so many other things going on that we had to take care of, like visas and a new house and things like that. And so, like Pat said, like, have grace for yourself, be gentle with yourself. And then I'm excited for the things that we have set as well. But I also know, like, I'm easing myself back into things. Like, number one, I had COVID, so I am having some lingering effects of that now. Like, I am very tired. I'm having kind of lingering headaches, that kind of stuff. And so I know if I push myself so hard, I'm not going to be able to get to any of those goals because I'm going to end up with, like, chronic fatigue or something. And so I'm trying to be very gentle. But also, if you're coming out of a rest period or maybe a very busy holiday season, like, don't feel like you have to hit the ground running, like, and hustle right away. Like, that's just going to cause burnout, and you're going to get to I'm picking the 15th as a number. I don't know. The 15th of January, the 31st of January.
Or
and
even
be like,
the end of January.
Yeah, and be like, oh, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Like, that's not what you want to do. You want to do a steady pace, like, and that kind of thing. You don't need to have January be this, I don't know.
Yeah, I think what you were saying too about our last year and like looking at it and going, oh, there are certain things that we didn't reach and like all that kind of stuff. I think what also though was important in that discussion when we were talking about it is, but we did take step towards those things.
Oh, totally.
There was a process, there was progress in some of those, things that we wanted to reach. And so I think that for me at least was a good reminder of like, okay, like we picked up where we were in that process in those progressions and keep going towards that stuff. It doesn't change the fact that like we'll never get there, or whatever. It's just being reminded that it just might take a little bit longer, and that's okay. And or something came up that might take you on a side path rather than the certain path that you thought it was. It's still going to probably get you to that same point, but there might be something off the shoot of that path that might actually help you even more or whatever, So I think it was a good reminder as we were like reflecting, at least for me, of going, okay, we didn't hit that, but there were certain things in the past year that have gotten us even closer. And being okay with that and celebrating that and getting excited about that kind of stuff. And then being reminded of the new year. Well, again, January 1 doesn't change the fact that, we are, we need to be hustling and getting to that point right away. It's just for being reminded of, okay, it's still going to take some time. The walk up that mountain is continuing, and that's okay. And that's good. And just keep going. So I don't know.
And I think, we are big believers of dream big. Like, don't, it's good to have realistic goals, but it's also good to have goals that like, you know, it's going to take some work to get to them. Like those are fun sometimes. It's also hard in the middle of them and stuff like that, but those are great. And we really do think you know, more than half of the stuff, like 90% of the things that we have done would never have happened if we didn't have like dream big kind of thing. But then also you got to break it down like into realistic things. And we talked about this, so I don't want to go into that. If you go back to episode, I think it's 6 and 7, we talk about your priorities and your time.
Yeah.
And that is what we go through at the end of the year as well. Or you know, we just did yesterday. Again, we did it on December 6th, or not December, sorry, January 6th. It's not like a lot of people like, you have to do it before January. If that's your thing, that's your thing. You may do it in February, like whatever.
Yeah.
Take time to reflect, take time to think ahead, whenever that date is. And so that's really important, of thinking of your priorities and your time as you look ahead, because you can, like we said, when we look back and looked at our calendar and things we had on it and stuff like that, there were some things that were like, ooh, we don't want that taking up time on our calendar anymore. Or, oh, like we didn't spend enough time with these people, or these are the kinds of things I want to look back and see on my calendar this year instead of this. So that's super important. But then also I think it is, looking as you look ahead too, and you're thinking about whatever goals or new habits and stuff like that, like you can't start everything all at once. You can't have 5 different trains heading, you know, to different directions and get those trains and push them ahead. Like if you have one and you can move that ahead, then as you get that one and as you get to that, like then you can start something else. Or as something does become a habit and you realize, great, I'm doing this thing on a consistent basis, then you add another habit on top of it and that kind of thing. But I think I'm complete, like we have had years where we have set some big audacious goals and dreams, but we've been trying to work on all of them at the same time. And that's almost always resulted in very slow progress, if any, in those things. And so
and probably in a lot of times we just kind of give up.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you don't see the progress, it's really hard to stick with something. And yes, there are seasons where you're not going to see the progress because things are building on top of each other. But if you're doing all of those things at the same time and you're not seeing results, that's really difficult. So
I know for me too, even like with being creative, and like a lot of times if I'm thinking about a goal or something I want to get to, a lot of times I've already created that in my head and I've already done it and it's done and I visualized it and it's already there. And then there's a disconnect that happens when I'm actually trying to do it. And then I just give up because I'm like, well, I kind of already visualized it. It's not really working the way I wanted to visualize it. So I just don't even do it. So again, I think it's another good reminder of like, it takes time, you know, breaking it out in simple chunks is way better than to try to take it all at once.
And I think, again, like I said, dream big, but also then realistically look at what's going on of your knowns that you already know for this year. So we did this where we looked at each quarter and, different things we know that are coming up. There's, of course, going to be stuff thrown at us that we have no clue about. Like, that will happen for sure. But, things coming up, like we have a big transition for one of our kids this year. They'll be moving schools and stuff like that. And, like, he in general doesn't deal with change very well. And so we know that's going to be probably a difficult and tiring time for everybody, and that we need to make sure we don't, fill our schedule a ton with certain things during that time frame. Like, just those are the kind of things to think ahead of it. Maybe you're going on a trip. It may be, there's some kind of health related thing like a surgery or whatever it may be. I think it's so good to look ahead on the things that are givens. Yep. And you may say, like, okay, this dream or this goal that I'm working towards, like, it's going to either have to pause during that time, or I'm only going to be able to do these little snippets of things during that time because of something else that's going on. And I think that's super important to just, because the worst is, which I tend to do, is I'm like, oh, well, I'll keep pushing through during that time and no big deal. Like, I'll do, and that leaves me exhausted or disappointed because I haven't been able to push through and stuff like that. So it's okay to say, like, oh, I think I need to be realistic right now on some of those things and bring down my expectations for that time period and know that, like, great, I can start moving forward more in a different way after we get through that season or those couple of weeks or whatever it may be. So I think that's something that we have found helpful as well. Again, something we have learned that we haven't always been the best with. So if you're thinking like, when do I want to start this habit? When do I want to start working on this goal or that kind of thing? Like, look at your year ahead and really think through that. Or things that you just know are givens, like if your kids are home at summer and you've got to sort out childcare, or they're home with you because you work from home, or whatever it may be, like those are all things to consider and stuff like that. Again, there will be plenty of stuff that comes up that we have no clue ahead of time, but at least we can think ahead for some of those things and yeah, kind of plan out our year a little bit. I say that I'm speaking in the past couple of years, having plans has kind of been a laughable idea.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you have to, stop the goals that you're working on and things like that. We have to be able to like kind of switch and curve and run with the changes and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just, again, it's a good reminder, it is a great time of year to do that, but it doesn't have to dictate doing everything right now.
No, it's just not possible.
It's just not possible.
And like we said, all you do when you do that and I feel like we were just talking about like every podcast we're listening to right now, every Instagram post I've seen, like all of that is all about like, here's how you set new goals. Here's how you accomplish them. And there's nothing, I'm like, actually, we've gotten some really good ideas from those things. However, like also take a deep breath and realize like, it's okay. If you haven't done those things yet, that's all right. If you haven't gone through the 15 steps to accomplish your goal or whatever it is, that's okay too. Like you have to, be gentle with yourself, but also like you need to, I am very proponent of like, you got to push yourself too. You don't want to be so gentle that you're not doing anything or not taking any steps towards things that you want to do. But like, again, the worst thing I could, I could speak personally for me right now. The worst thing I could do right now is try and force all these new habits and things like that. And like, work where we're working late at night and all of that. Again, like I said, as I'm recovering from having COVID and I'm feeling still not 100%, the worst thing I could do is start trying to push through all of those things. Like physically, I cannot do that right now. And that's really hard for me to say that. If I can't even walk a certain amount of time without getting exhausted when I normally could go through that like crazy, like why do I think all the other things are going to be able to push 100% at that time? And we all have different things that are going to be that. And so again, being gentle with yourself. Also, like go for it. We're not saying that. Obviously, we have said that in so many different things. It is so important to go for it and that kind of thing. But take it slow. It's okay to take it slow, especially as you ease into the new year and things like that. And set some dates for things. If you're like, oh, I think, I would like to start this at this time or something, like put it on your calendar. We did that. We said we were going to review some things every month and look at it. And, some of those things may fall off and we may say, that's not going to happen right now. Like, that's not realistic. We really need to focus on this. Again, that priorities in your time is super important when you're looking at this stuff. But I think we just wanted to send out some encouragement to all of you as we feel like we have been bombarded with the do now, change this is your time, like, and oh my goodness, at least me, I don't know if your Instagram is like this, but every ad I'm seeing right now is for some app to work out or shows the before and afters or some supplement I'm supposed to take and all of that stuff. And I wish I could I don't know if there's a way to just turn those off, but what we're told right now is like, this is your time. And if you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. And that's not true. Like almost always, whenever something has been a new habit for us, it's not necessarily been in January that we've started it.
No.
And it's been a habit then that has stuck and changed our lives, but it's not been January that we started it, if that makes any sense. And so I think that's the encouragement of like, yes, set some goals, set some habits you want to change, whatever you want to call those things, like, but you can put them throughout the year. It doesn't have to be all in 100% this month as the year starts. Like start something, put yourself that you're like, you know what, I'm going to start something in March. Because again, you can't do it all. That's when we looked at our stuff that we're really desiring. We have certain things we're working towards. Some things are, like we said before, some things are dominoes. Like you have to do this before you do this. So those are really, kind of.
That's easy to
that's
break
easy
it down.
To figure out once you figure out what those things are. And so obviously all those not going to happen at once. Or, like we said, you can't start 15 habits at the same time and think you're going to journal, work out, have your smoothie, like do all these things and start working up at 5 a.m. when you were normally waking up at 9 a.m. Like you can't start doing all of those things all at once. It'll probably only last a very short time, like one thing at a time and all that. So, anything else to add?
I just think, again, thinking about it and just even you saying certain things, it's like, gosh, thinking about trying to do all the things that we're hoping to get to this year, all right now, like completely overwhelms me. It doesn't make me want to do any of it. So I think, again, it's just a good reminder to really go, okay, just because it's January doesn't mean you have to do it all right now. You don't have to figure out all the new routines, all the new, gym memberships, all the new everything that you want to get done right now. It's okay to say, actually, you know what? Like right now, all I can do is this one thing. I think it's also important, to think, because again, Mai and I are like, we want to continue to grow. We want to continue to grow. We don't want to stay stagnant. And so that's really important to us. And I think, setting some of these goals and these new rhythms and routines and habits or whatever you want to call them is really important to us. So I think being reminded of that and saying, okay, if I continue to do the same thing I'm always done, that's not going to be helpful either. So again, being graceful with yourself as well, saying, look, I don't want to be that same person I was last year, but I also know I can't do everything right away. And so just taking each step at a time, each day at a time, and really thinking about, okay, if I could only do one thing this month, what is that one thing? Mm-hmm. And not feeling pressure just because it's January to start everything anew and afresh and all the stuff, I think it's just, at least I'm reminded, like I was really struggling with some health things too at the end of last year and I was just trying to do too much and realizing like that's not sustainable. And so really taking it easy, gentle, and being reminded that, taking one bite at a time is better than trying to swallow the whole thing.
Well, because when you do that, when you're overwhelmed and you have so much you're trying to do, you are either going to be like you were like, it's going to hit your health, it's going to hit to a stress point, and then you're not going to be able to do anything. Yeah. Or you're going to give up because there's too much and you don't know what to pick and you don't know what to work on and you don't know what to focus on. Like there's only two directions that goes and we'll go. And we have only are saying that because we have learned it and we have years of experience of this. And it's really, especially when you have your own business and stuff like that, like it's so easy to fall into that trap of like, I can do it all. And so I think going really easy, it's kind of the idea of like, if you're teaching a child to read, I'm not going to hand them Lord of the Rings and say, go figure this out. Like they're not going to start with that. They're going to start with like figuring out the sounds and things like that. And then we start with some board books and we work our way up and that kind of stuff. Like do not go from zero to that right away. And so I think that's something to keep in mind of like, number one, break down your goals that you have, what things you need to do first and those kinds of things. And like we all have a starting point with starting a habit and that kind of stuff. And we can't go from like a massive, classic novel with lots of words and stuff like that right away. So if you think of it in that concept, if it's just, again, go slow, like we're not saying don't go for it and that kind of thing.
Actually, we're wanting you to go for it.
Yes, exactly.
It's just finding a better way than going from 0 to 100.
Yeah.
Right away.
So we hope this is encouraging to you just as we've been reflecting and as we are entering to the new year and everything like that.
And just being bombarded with all of the
all the things telling you quite the opposite of what we have just said. And I don't think in the podcast, but I'm sure there is on Instagram posts and stuff where you will see where we have said exactly what everyone else is saying right now.
I'm sure we have.
And so we have learned. We have learned a lot in probably the past 5-6 years and that kind of thing. And so you might be like, wait, but you said one time and like, sorry, like this is what happens when you grow and you put stuff out there and things like that we have just learned what works and what doesn't when you try to overwhelm yourself with too many things at once. So we are cheering you on into this new year, cheering you on in things, the dreams and the hopes and the goals that you have, and also saying like, take a deep breath Take it one step at a time. And then the stuff happens
Yeah.
because you don't wear yourself out. So yeah, we hope that's encouraging, and Happy New Year to you.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode of the Laurent Collective podcast. If you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave a review, which helps others find our podcast. Continue the conversation with us over on Instagram at Laurent Collective.
We look forward to going deeper than just surface talk with you again next week.